Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new edition of the Road to Indy Insider. My name is Rob Howden. Season done. So we are actually starting to look forward to 2021. But before we do that, I thought it would be a good idea for us to roll out a 2020 season review. A fantastic season this particular year. COVID-19, of course, made things so odd. We end up jamming the season into about 3 months, from early July to again the end of October, and a little more than that. And a lot of the drivers liked it. We went back to back at a bunch of different events. We had a couple of standalone events, which we haven't had as well. Of course, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We were there by ourselves at IMS. We did a standalone as well, triple headers for both USF2000 and Indy Pro 2000 at New Jersey Motorsports Park, which when we do our season preview show, or at least our off-season show, start doing the silly season, we'll look at where we're going to be going, back to New Jersey Motorsports Park again. But the bottom line was we were able to get a lot of races in. And kudos to everyone from Anderson Promotions and working with the venues as well, working with IndyCar, the standalone events we have. Big shout out to everyone from Green Savory who were able to actually get St. Petersburg back running after we left there in March. Great season, as I said. Deserving champions of Christian Rasmussen and Stingray Robb. But joining me here today is going to be a good friend of mine, Steve Wittich from TSOladder.com. TSO, of course, for Trackside Online. TSO Ladder is their website that focuses only on the ladder system programs here on the Road to Indy. Let's bring Steve in, and we'll say hello to my buddy. Steve, how are you, man?
Good. How are you, Rob? Thanks for having me on.
That's good to have you. You know what? It's November the 9th. I went for a walk this morning. It was 68 degrees here in Cambridge. I don't know what it's like in Indy, but man, I'll take 68 in November.
I'm wearing shorts. It's nice and warm. Windows are open in the house. It's
crazy.
Perfect. Yeah, I know. It feels more like September right now.
We could keep racing. Let's do another race.
I'm in.
Hey, what do you think about the truncated schedule? Obviously, jamming everything in, back-to-back weekends. I think that a lot of the drivers liked it, but man, I'm just happy we were able to get the season done.
Yeah, exactly. I think just getting it in, like you said, you got to give a lot of credit to everybody involved, Anderson Promotions and IndyCar and the promoters and the teams for getting through and working through it and being safe. I know it wasn't easy for everybody. And,
yeah.
And it was tough on the drivers in some ways too, not as much practice, not as much testing.
Yep.
So, kudos to everybody for getting it in. I know it was tough, and I'm very glad they did get it in, because losing a season would have been really tough for some of the young drivers. And it would have been just brutal on the teams.
Yeah, same goes for Indy Lights, right? Those Indy Lights teams obviously not able to get their seasons in, but a lot of those guys, the team owners, I think, more well off than maybe some of the younger teams, some of the smaller teams lower down in the ladder, which need racing to go racing. I brought up the Anderson Promotions group because I know that as things were happening through the first 4 months of our COVID shutdown, when we were all locked in our houses, I was messaging Michelle Kish or Dan Anderson. I'm like, what's going on? Give me some heads up. And the schedule was such a flow.
All the time. I know that.
Continually changed. Hey, we could be going here. We could be going here. And man, it was just, it was wild that they were able to get it put together. But you mentioned the teams, and it's funny. This is very IndyCar-like in terms of the teams, right? Because IndyCar teams, people don't realize that they're honestly constantly back to back. You finish an oval race, back at the shop, getting cars ready for the next event. Sometimes it's the next weekend. Sometimes there's a weekend off. We're all like, they get a weekend off. No, they actually go in testing somewhere, right? Later in the week. This was very IndyCar-like, as our teams were going from track to track, and not a lot of time. I know that a number of teams stayed after the race at Gateway at Worldwide Technology, Steve. They were actually set up for a couple of days working on their cars there. Yeah,
and that happens. You see that happen quite a lot in IndyCar, especially for teams that aren't, if you're going from, where do we go, Gateway to New Jersey, right? Some teams they'll come back to Indy and do that. But a lot of teams, Road to Indy, aren't based in Indianapolis. So it works that way. A lot of teams in IndyCar, if they have a week where they're not going by their shop, they'll just set up and work at the track for a couple of days, and then, might send their crew home for 2 days, send monkeys on their way. But that seems to happen quite a bit in IndyCar. And, like you said, it happened a little bit this year too in Road to Indy.
All right, well, let's get things underway. Let's get started here and have a look at the season. I'll ask your initial thoughts. Let's jump over here to Road America. Little shot there of the USF2000 crews coming up the hill to get things underway. One of my favorite racetracks, Steve, Road America. The actual venue itself, it's just, I'm so glad we were able to go to Road America. And I think having some of those key tracks and not just all club tracks, potentially, if we would have had to do that, To be able to go to Road America, I think got things underway well. Good start to the season, and I think neither of us should be surprised probably that Christian Rasmussen was so strong.
No, I'm definitely not a surprise. He ended off last season as the hottest driver, and he started off just exactly where he left off, the hottest driver. And he pretty much, the first 5 or 6 weeks of the first 5 or 6 races of the year were all Christian. But it wasn't a shock. I think he led the one practice session, started on pole, led every lap. It wasn't a huge shock to see him win. It was definitely tough for the younger drivers to come into a situation where, you didn't have the testing you were going to have, but going to Road America is not a bad place to start the season. Right?
Yeah, it's not St. Petersburg, right? St. Petersburg's always a little sketchy, I think.
You've got some room to make mistakes, and there's a little bit of and it races well too, right? It really does race well, and I know it does put a lot of pressure on the drivers because there's a lot of passing, and there's a lot of, you got to get the setup right there, right? Like there's that fine balance between getting too much, having way too much downforce and not having enough.
Yeah, and I like you said, it's a racy track. You can pass in 1, down into 3, into 5. We know you can pass into hurry downs in 7. It's in the Canada corner. It's such a great racetrack for overtaking. But as you said, if the setup's not, remember, there's a lot of turns there. And it's a high-speed commitment racetrack. And if the car's not perfect, especially for a young driver, high commitment, if you don't have a lot of comfort and confidence in the car, it can set you back a little bit, I think.
Yeah, turn 1, there's all bravery. Right. The Kinks bravery, Canada. Carousel's a lot of bravery. So, like you said, if you don't have, you've got to get that set up, then get that young driver comfortable to be able to go fast there.
Yeah, you mentioned Christian Rasmussen, the first essentially 3 events on the season able to dominate, right? Road America, then we go to Mid-Ohio, and he sweeps Mid-Ohio, and then, of course, he's able to win at Lucas Oil Raceway in the Freedom 75 as well. But I wasn't overly surprised because of him, but at Road America to have a couple of drivers for Cape Motorsports be strong. Christian, of course, was able to get away, get that nice lead, and hold on. But both Josh Green and Michael D'Orlando kind of came out of the box pretty well at Road America as well.
Yeah, I think I was looking up here. Yeah, and you know what? Rasmussen's wins there weren't, I was looking, 0.6 of a second both times. So it's not like he completely dominated, but he led every lap, and, he was started up front. So it wasn't too big of a deal. But yeah, not a shock to see the Cape guys up front. It was probably not the driver. Michael didn't surprise me. I thought he was impressive when he was with Bennick a couple of years ago in USF. He showed some pace. Josh Green obviously has the pedigree of Team USA scholarship winner and coming out of Formula Ford, and but it was Reese Gold that had the rough start to the season there. That surprised me a little bit.
You want to bring that so? I don't know if that was even his fault. You put more on Nolan Siegel there, but in the opening round of the race, where you're going to use qualifying fast lap from that race to qualify for race number 2 as well, he and Nolan Siegel get together coming through turn number 7, kind of collected each other, and that put Reese on the back foot from the very beginning. He was kind of having to claw his way back, and I could see his confidence probably. I didn't see it, but I could have understood his confidence kind of falling as Christian was winning races, and he was trying to claw his way back a little bit. But that incident, Steve, in the very first race of the year with him and Siegel, man, really, you got to think it had Reese wondering what was going to happen.
Wasn't it, I think so.
It was really early, right?
Yeah, first lap of the season. So
was it first lap? Was it lap 1 or 2?
I think it was. Yeah, it was early. It was lap 1 or 2. Yeah,
1 or 2. Yeah.
But and they qualified. Was it 5th and 7th or something like that? Like they were qualified, decent.
Yeah.
But it's a tough way. But like you said, the next race, you're starting on where your fastest lap of the race. You get faster as the race goes on, and then you started the next race at the very tail end. So
that wasn't good. That wasn't good at all. Interesting thing about Road America is it's normally, I kind of call it the breakout weekend for the rookie drivers in the series, because normally we do St. Petersburg. That's an event, at that opening round where, I'll tell it, and most people will tell any rookie driver in the series, stay away from the wall, give yourself a little bit of breathing room, just get out with a car that you can roll back in the trailer every day, right? That's the key there. And then we either go to Barber or wherever it may be, and then we're on the road course at Indianapolis, then the Oval. Then we finally get ourselves to Road America. It's normally at the end of June. And so the drivers are more comfortable. The rookies aren't feeling so new. They're a lot more comfortable. This time we come out of the box, and I think that was one of the big things about Road America. The rookies just not as comfortable as they could have been to challenge for spots up front.
Yeah, no, definitely. You saw, other than Josh Green, the rookies did struggle a little bit, right? Like Christian Brooks, who ended the season awfully well, struggled a little bit at that.
I want to say they had an issue in qualifying for Christian too. I think something happened. He didn't get a lot of laps in, I think, but he was able to start up front in one of the races. So, Rasmussen ends up with the win in the opening round. Green second, Barrichello third, and then Rasmussen over D'Orlando and Green in race number 2. From there, we move to Mid-Ohio. A lot of Cooper Tire branding at Mid-Ohio. And that was another one of those races, Steve, where we kind of weren't sure what was going to go on in terms of what races we were going to go to. We ended up being there by ourselves at Mid-Ohio for that weekend. But another great racetrack, kind of a cornerstone series for the Road to Indy.
Yeah, it was. That was the first time I'd been back on the road since I'd been down in St. Pete, and it was really weird just being there as a standalone event. Yeah, ended up working out really well. Yep. You get a little bit more track time, obviously, right? They had the test day beforehand.
Yep.
And you get a little bit more test.
3 races for everybody.
Yeah, and 3 races for everybody. So you get that little bit more track time, and there's not that big rush to we might have to cut a race short because IndyCar's coming on, or there's a TV coming on.
Yeah, that's right.
Coming on. So it's a little bit more relaxed, but again, it worked out really well to be able to go there twice, and for 3 races. It's for USF2000. It's a really racy track. Some of the other series, as you move up, there's a chance to pass, but for USF2000, for some reason, it's easy. I think what it is, it's easy to make a mistake there, right?
And I think the lower downforce on the USF2000 cars too, right?
Right, and it's very easy to make a mistake, which opens the door for other drivers. Then,
well, look at some of the tough corners. The turn, which is I guess they call it 3, right? Or, no, it's 2. Yeah, the keyhole where it's downhill, off camber, such an opportunity to just make a mistake there, go off on the exit. Same goes for cooking it down into turn number 4. And then, of course, coming up and over the hill into Thunder Valley in turn number 9.
Yeah, 9's tough. 9's one of the tougher corners.
It is one of the tougher corners in the U.S., I think. Yeah, to be able to roll so much speed off camber, lose it down the hill, it's a tough one. But again,
you can get messed up on your sight lines, and it's pretty
very
easy
true.
Very easy to make a mistake there. And it's costly to make a mistake there, too. You usually make contact if you make a mistake there.
That's true. That is because it's so tight. Right, it's always so tight because you can't get by somebody. You hook
the drivers right, and you'll hit that. You see a lot of guys at the inside wall there, or driver on the wall on drivers right at exit.
So there's an opportunity then for everybody's like, hey, we can go to Mid-Ohio. We're going to be able to challenge Christian.
Yeah, no. Those were the biggest wipeouts of he was just dominant. I mean, crazy.
Yeah, he was really dominant. I think the only chick in the armor, Barrichello, I think qualified on pole for round 1. That was about the only chick in the armor, right? Barrichello stepped it up at that point though, and I think another perfect example of the second-year driver to a certain, to get in there and really start battling. And I thought he was really, really, really impressive at that particular weekend, just settling into where he was with Pabst Racing.
Yeah, it seemed like he had a podium obviously in the first race, but they didn't seem as comfortable. He seemed a little more comfortable where he was. And I think it was tough because he was stuck here in the US and he's used to traveling with his family, and he was by himself, right? So he had to do his own thing, and as a teenager, that's not necessarily easy to do, especially if you're used to traveling with other people. And that's obviously he came much more prepared for that weekend, or it was midweek even, which was even stranger, but it was he was definitely prepared for that one.
Right. Hey, listen, I was thinking about going through USF2000, then going through Indy Pro. Let's back up real quickly to Indy Pro at Road America. Let's make sure we do both series. So we'll go back to Road America real quick. We talked about how Christian did so well here at Mid-Ohio. Road America, were you surprised with how things started? Obviously, the opening win goes to Daniel Frost, qualified well. They had some trouble in the Turn 3 Motorsport car. They had the wrong top gear into, I think, sixth gear. He starts at the tail of the field, but man, he goes from dead last and wins the race.
I know it was the closest finish of the season in the first race of the season. It was crazy.
Didn't that kind of, you think, set the stage for, man, Daniel Frost and Turn 3 are going to be like,
oh yeah, for sure.
They can walk away with this thing.
Unstoppable, right?
Didn't happen that way, but yeah. So and then of course DeFrancesco got the pole at that point, had a pretty good run. what I thought was maybe as important as what Frost did was the fact that Artem Petrov came back for Juncos Racing, was able to get the win the next day. And I think Artem and Juncos needed a strong result early to get things rolling in the right direction.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. It's they, I know how disappointed they were to not win the championship with Rasmus the year before. Yeah. So getting off on the right foot definitely helped. And, Artem came through and drove a really nice race in the second race there at Road America. And I think some people were surprised to see him win, but I don't think you and I probably were. No. He made some mistakes his rookie season. He's very aggressive. Man, he's got some speed.
He does. So, and, I did the interview with Stingray Robb of the Champions interview, and they had the issue with the car where he didn't get to qualify well and end up having to come back to the front. And in that race, well, I think they finished 1-2 in the second race, I believe, right?
I believe so.
I think off the top of my head, they were P1 and P2. And Stingray said he wasn't able to catch them. I think that if you look forward to what happened with Stingray at the end of the season, I think the success that they had kind of as two drivers and within a team, and with Nate Aranda as well, the success they had as a team allowed Stingray to end up win the championship at the end of the season. You think about it, had they maybe had some kind of any kind of friction? Because they got together last year. I think it was Artem that got into the right. Yeah, Artem drove into the back of Stingray at the start of one of the races. Was it at Portland? I think
so. Yeah.
So there could have been friction there, but there wasn't. And I think the success maybe for Artem allowed that team to maybe meld a little better. I'll ask Ricardo that when I get him on. But don't you think that would have been a possible?
For sure. And it was an interesting season for that team. Like, I think they went down to 5 full-time employees. That was it, right? Wow. Working on those 3 cars. So, I think they obviously brought people in on the weekend, but Ricardo was more involved. Everybody was a little bit more involved. And to start out well like that definitely helped the team. And it helped. I think it helped both drivers. They both had a great season. And it gave Stingray some competition within the team that helped push him to be better.
It did. Yeah. And then, so let's look at a couple of, you talk about Stingray getting better. We go to Mid-Ohio, which is where we are. We're talking about Rasmussen with his domination there. Let's talk about Indy Pro at Mid-Ohio, because it really would, I think, have been kind of a turning point to a certain extent for the season, so early in the season, when you get Braden Eves coming out of the gate to get that first race win, right? He wanted to get that win for Exclusive Autosport. He's able to win the opening round. And then Artem comes back and wins round 2, but then Stingray winning round number 3, the continued success for Juncos Racing, all the confidence. And then once Stingray was able to get that win, all the floodgates opened as I expected they would.
Yeah. And I know, talking to him after the season, that he struggled in race 1 there, right? Like, I think, what did he finish? 10th, maybe 9th?
And he said he just was off. It was all him.
He was off, and he refocused. He said he had to refocus himself, and then he came back and finished 3rd the next day, and then won the finale or the final of the 3 races there. And he came from 5th in that second, or that in his win, which is impressive.
That's exactly right. He told us that in the podcast, and he really wasn't even right up front, but he just said to himself, "I got to go do this."
Right. And what's interesting that it happened at Mid-Ohio, because I look back at Stingray's career, over the last 3-4 years.
I like you with the stats.
Yeah. But I think last year, I wasn't sure Stingray was going to be a pro driver until Mid-Ohio last year. He always had the speed. You always knew the pace was going to be there. He wasn't always in the best equipment to start his career. But then last year at Mid-Ohio, I saw aggression. Yeah. And that continued through the rest of the season. You knew, like you've been saying all along, it was just a matter of time now, right? You saw him get poles late in the season last year and contend for wins, and you just knew it was coming. But yeah, and it's good that win came at Mid-Ohio, because for me, that's kind of where he made that leap into, oh wait, this kid might be a pro driver.
Yeah, I agree with you. When you're slogging away there and not up there, getting that potential race win, I think it opens everybody's eyes. And it really was just a breakout. And I think, and that just goes against Steve with us talking about the fact that for the most part, they're still kids. You don't want to denigrate them and say, hey, you're just a kid.
No, I know he's still young, right?
He's still a teenager. Like, literally, it's 18, 19. He's still a teenager. And I think sometimes we don't give them enough leeway as being kids and just waiting for them to mature and waiting for that breakout. But I think everybody and we'll see this and maybe be able to look at it differently over the next 5 to 10 years when you think back of how Stingray actually grew up essentially as a race car driver this year, right?
Oh yeah, definitely for sure.
Big time. Big time.
Sure. And I think as you and I are lucky we get to know these kids as they're younger, and I think he grew as a man too. Being able to handle an interview and knowing what to say, and very different Stingray this year. And I remember that, I looked to a kid like him who I know he wasn't comfortable speaking in public, but he went and did the school play, I think last year, right? Where he played Macbeth.
Wow.
So I think doing stuff like that helped him a lot.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, no, I think it is too, right? Like, it just gives you confidence. So
again, we roll at the start of the season Indy Pro at one point. Frost, Petrov, Eves, and Robb. We got 4 different winners in the first 2 weekends. Which for me, what did you think about Indy Pro? I was looking at. Okay, I'm looking at USF. I'm like, okay, Rasmussen's on a roll. He could sweep the season. What's going to happen? Indy Pro, I'm like, this thing is wide open because we knew guys were still going to win races. You know what I mean?
Right, and we left Mid-Ohio, and I'm looking back at my stuff here, and the guy who hadn't won a race yet was leading the points. Devlin DeFrancesco. Right, so you go, oh, okay, this is going to be, and I kind of knew at that point this is going to be a fun season, because it just seemed there were a bunch of different guys that could win races. And, full credit to Devlin too, right? Like, I mean, I don't think people understand how hard this season had to be for someone like him who never in the car before, never raced these tracks, brand new team, get me wrong, Andretti, Steinbrenner Racing, good people, fantastic people.
Oh, yeah.
Haven't run this car before, never been on these tracks. He started off the season when he had 3 podiums in the first 5 races, I think. So
and you said that. Think about Andretti, Steinbrenner Autosport. You got Doug Zister, obviously one of the most respected Indy Lights engineers, and has worked in IndyCar as well. A great crew of people on the car. Jessica Mace ends up winning IndyCar Mechanic of the Year on that car, but that car was brand new to them, like you said.
Right.
It's like
right. It was a leased car, right? Like it was a last minute. Devlin was set to do F3 again in Europe, and decided, we'll stay over here this season and put this deal together. And it was he was
supposed to run lights,
right? Exactly.
Right.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that I think it was smart. It worked out really well for him, and I think they impressed early like that. I was very impressed and you never know coming from Europe, right? Because you and I have talked about this a million times. I can't tell from the European results sometimes because, the teams there's such a vast difference in teams. There's such a vast difference in how a driver gets treated on a team.
Yeah.
And I've talked about to Devlin about that, and he's like, it's so different racing over here. It's just you get treated. You have a chance to win with pretty much every team. Well, we saw that this year. We had, I think, 7 different teams.
8 winners.
8 winners.
7 teams. 7 teams.
So that's crazy to me.
It is.
You don't see that in the European Series, right? You just don't.
That's very true.
You very often see one team dominate and one driver from that one team dominates. So his early like you said, we had those 4 different early winners, but none of them were leading the points.
That's true. All right, so we'll go from Mid-Ohio to the Oval. Folks, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, do me a favor and press that like button, the thumbs up button. I appreciate that. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. So now we move to Lucas Oil Raceway, Steve, with the Freedom 75 and the Freedom 90. Let's start with USF2000. In years past, we've seen Exclusive Autosport be fast. Newman Walks Racing won with Cameron Shields the year before. Cape Motorsports has won many, many times. This is one of the things where I thought, okay, let's see what Christian Rasmussen's got here. He really liked the Oval last year. He's with Jay Howard Driver Development. They got a good engineering crew there. Louis D'Agostino and a bunch of the guys with Jay, of course, over there as well. The fact that he was able to win there and have, not a team that we'd seen win before, I think that was another. I just kept thinking that we were just going to roll on to a championship. I really did.
Yeah, after that race, his lead I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but it was ridiculous, right? Like he had one of those leads that you're like, oh, there's nobody going to touch him.
Not a chance.
Not a chance, right? Because, and we've got double points or not double, but, times and a half points on the ovals. So he walks out of there with just a huge lead. Like, I think, let me look back at myself.
What was it? You got it there?
He'd missed out on 2 points the whole season to that point.
Wow. One of them being the pole at
one of them being at the pole, and then didn't have the fastest lap at Lucas Oil.
Seriously?
Missed out on 2 points. That's it. So
that's unbelievable.
Yeah,
that's crazy. It is crazy. But again, so a big win for him at Lucas Oil Raceway, which I think was obviously key. Mindset wise, and this is why I think the issue is when we'll get there, but when we eventually went to Indianapolis, I think that's why the mindset would have changed, right? Because they struggled a little bit. He had the one issue that I just think that it's eventually going to be a good thing for Christian Rasmussen that he had such a struggle mid-season, because he had to overcome that with the mindset. I think it's going to be massive when he moves forward.
Yeah, definitely. You have to learn how to overcome that and get through that, and it's a mental game, right? It's not.
There's no way he's going to have something like that again. It's ridiculous.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about. I like this. Let me bring the shot up. Let's talk about this story. Christian Rasmussen, of course, getting the win in USF2000. We had all those different winners in Indy Pro 2000. Steve, we end up coming to Lucas Oil Raceway, and we get news that Cody Swanson, 5-time USAC Silver Crown champion.
Yep.
This is a USAC superstar. He signs a deal with Legacy Autosport. He's going to come and race in Indy Pro 2000. They ended up. They tested up. I think up at Lacrosse.
I think at Lacrosse.
Up in Wisconsin, tested Lacrosse. I saw that. I'm like, oh, this is really interesting.
Yeah, no, I saw when he's testing. I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of fun.
Oh, this is kind of fun. And my deal was, hey, is he just testing at the field out, or is he going to run the Freedom?
Right.
Well, he comes to the Freedom. Everything starts rolling, and wow, qualifies on the pole position. Right?
No, second.
Oh, second. Who's on pole?
Damn it.
Yeah, off pole. Sorry, off pole. Who's on the pole? Why can't I?
Yeah, I'm struggling here.
I don't know off the top of my head right now. I'll find it in a second. But let's talk.
I'll get it.
You get it.
Thank you.
You got it? Hey, listen, this is good live TV. It's better than
no kidding. Oh, geez, man.
Did you see the interview I did with Stingray?
No, I haven't watched that one yet.
Well, I think somebody came to drop off a package or something.
Oh, dude. Well,
dude, I'm rolling through here pretty good here right now.
Suleiman.
Qualifying, Manuel Suleiman. That's right. Oh, that's right, Manuel. So that was so there you go. That's perfect. So that's how that settles on. This is one of the cool. I think one of the really cool points, at least for me, calling the races. Manuel Suleiman's leading. They're coming up on one of the lap cars, and it was just Manuel. It was his first oval race, right? I don't think he ran the oval last year in USF2000.
Yeah, he did, but
he's leading through 3 and 4. And he's doing what anybody would do, right? Okay, I got a guy in front of me. He's I'm not sure where he's going to go. I'm going to check up a bit. And Swanson just rolls the outside.
Oh, yeah.
Because he knows by the time he gets around the outside, the timing-wise, he's going to be able to come back in front. And he just rolls around the outside, threads the needle, and takes the lead away from Suleiman.
That's having thousands of oval races under the belt. Right there.
Yes.
That's exactly what that is, right?
And I'll tell you, I hope we see more of Cody, because that was amazing. He's just... what a great dude. What an engaging guy.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. Here's my takeaway, and I'll take this opportunity to ask you this question. We've seen over the last number of years, drivers from the USAC program try to go to the Freedom 100, right? I understand if you're a Silver Crown driver, midget champion, of course, Chris Wyndham, the guys we've had come up before. You want to go right out of your top level right into the Freedom. That's what you want to do. This is the first time we ever saw a driver who was a top USAC driver not go to lights first, but go to Indy Pro 2000.
Right.
And personally, I think it's I think it's a better place to go to test first. Because now, Cody Swanson, because Cody ran Gateway as well, Cody would go to the Freedom if we had it this year. Hopefully it'll come back in another year or two. I think he'd be able to go to the Freedom so much more prepared to drive the Indy Lights car, having run the Indy Pro car at Lucas Oil.
Yeah, because it's such a different animal, right?
Yeah.
And it's in a place like Lucas Oil. Don't get me wrong; there's still walls, and you can make a mistake, and you can hurt the car. But at IMS on the oval, the first time you're there as a guy who's driven a front engine car your entire career, it's not easy, because your instincts are,
wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Wrong. Exactly it. Wrong. Yeah. You do not turn right, period.
Yeah. Well,
right?
here's the thing. You lose the car so fast, an Indy Lights car at the Freedom.
Yeah.
Cody told me, I'm sure he told you as well, there were so many times where that car was getting away from him, but he just trusted in it. right? He didn't overcorrect, just let it, and that was key, I think.
Yeah, because it's so hard for these guys coming from the dirt because they don't drive with the steering wheel per se, right? They drive with their feet, right?
Yeah.
Their throttle. The throttle is how you control a sprint car, and probably having the Silver Crown experience on the pavement helped him a lot because it's very different than what he stepped into, but it's not quite the same as on dirt. You do use the steering wheel a lot more than you do the throttle on the pavement, but. He's also he does it a lot of dirt racing. And it's just not the natural way to drive for those guys. So for him to come in and do what he did was damn impressive.
I like the fact when I asked him about what the big difference was, he said, where my head sits in this car is where the bottom of my seat is in the Silver Crown car. Just the position is so different. Yeah. He makes that big pass, a huge victory for Cody Swanson as well. I thought a really good run for Manuel Suleiman. He deserves props there. Stingray Robb as well. Stingray was side by side. It was a learning experience for him. He was trying to go side by side with Cody. How many laps were they side by side?
Oh, quite a few. It was good.
My God. And he just burned the tires off, went backwards. So, yeah. And listen, another star there with DeFrancesco.
Right.
He and Hunter McElroy moving forward, save the tires, move forward at the end.
Yeah, that's very true. A few more laps in that, the results of that race might have been very different too, right?
Big time, yeah.
No, that was an entertaining race for sure. And sometimes the Indy Pro there hasn't always been the most entertaining of races, right? But it definitely was this time. So.
I liked it, man. I liked that race. I thought that was a solid race. All right, so let's go.
Tires there. Let's do it again because I thought it worked really well.
Whatever they took, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. So we go. For these drivers, we go right from Lucas Oil Raceway. Their next event was Gateway, Worldwide Technology Raceway. And the interesting thing for me in this particular weekend, there's two things. Obviously, tremendous performance by the race winner and a badass drive by Braden Eves coming from deeper in the field. But, I've kind of figured as a lifelong road racer, Devlin DeFrancesco's first win was going to come at a mid-Ohio or something like that, right? Or maybe Indianapolis on the road course. Kid wins his first race at Worldwide Technology and really dominated the action throughout the entire weekend and throughout the entire race. That was pretty dominant. That was kind of I think a statement for Francesco.
It really was. It was an impressive drive for someone who hadn't really, ovals are fairly new, obviously a fairly new thing, and it's a very different oval than Lucas Oil too, right? It's much like that. I know it's not that much longer, but the speeds are just so much higher, and with two different ends of the track that require different techniques to drive them. It's not easy to learn that. And it was one of those wake up like, oh, wow. Drive. Yeah. Like this kid, sometimes you see this, right. Where you're not sure about a driver and then they get on their first oval and you're like, oh, okay, that kid could be a really good IndyCar driver.
That's it. Right. That's it. Yeah. I'm glad you said that because I agree with that completely. It's again, ovals are so much about the setup. Let's be real, right? It's not all about it, but the driver has to believe in the team. And of course, he was the point leader at a time. So he's got a good connection with the crew, with his engineer. And they gave him a good car there. Remember, they again didn't know a lot about that race car.
Nope.
Right?
Nope. Now we do have to say, okay, that car came from a team that had fast cars there in the past.
That's true.
Right.
True.
So I'm sure.
Was that Kirkwood's car?
I don't know if it was, but it was an RP car. I know that
it was an RP. Yeah, was able to win with last year. At least the setup. Well,
yep. Yeah.
Did they?
And remember, Harrison Scott had the pole there too.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even ask. Did they just lease the car? Or did they lease the setup book as well?
I don't know. I would. Yeah, it's a good question.
So let's cap off Worldwide Technology Raceway. And again, a much different oval, like you said, turn 1 and 2, so much different than turn number 3 and 4. That's what I like about that racetrack. Watching, there wasn't a lot of passing, and that's normally what we normally see there, right? People get in the groove. There is that arrow wash when you get underneath somebody. But I'll tell you, the side-by-side action, Braden Eves for Exclusive Autosport kept working on Stingray, working. Stingray chop him down. He get inside and chop him down. I don't think Braden was super happy with that.
Probably not, but
hey, suck it up, man. We're going racing.
Yeah, exactly.
But finally, Braden able to make the pass, pulls away, and then he chased down Artem Petrov and passed him on the outside. Was it second last lap? I think passed her on the outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the point where you looked at Braden's season at that point. You're like, okay, this is, I think he was sitting third in points. So
yeah, I really thought that was a move for him.
Yeah, I thought it was a good drive because they kind of struggled a little bit after their win with the next few events, and it came back and like, okay, this is definitely could be good.
Yeah, no doubt. He was working with Merle Swan in the car that weekend, so that was really solid. All right, so let's go from there. What's next up on the docket? Oh, that's right. We have a standalone event at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I want to say to a certain extent a breakout for one for sure, but let's start with USF2000. You got to say the breakout weekend for Eduardo Barrichello as well. Even though Rasmussen had that big lead in the points, Steve, for Barrichello to come in there and get a couple of wins, the amount that had to do for his confidence moving forward is going to be huge as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, it was. And it was a big breakout for a lot of different drivers that weekend, I thought. It was
true.
It was interesting, right? Like, Reese had a good weekend.
Yep.
William Miller had a good week, right? Like, it was a good
Christian Brooks,
right? Like, it was a good weekend for a lot of drivers, right?
Yeah.
So, which is interesting because that track sometimes, and again, it's another track. It's a great, like Road America, it's a great track for the Road to Indy because you can pass.
Yeah.
And you can still make a mistake and not, there's obviously areas you can have contact, but you can, in turn one, you can make a mistake and not hit anything.
And the same thing back down to the end of Holman Boulevard too, in turn number 7, right? You can make a mistake there, exactly the same thing.
Run off there, So there's places to be a driver. And
you said a lot of different stories. Who gets 2 pole positions there? Kiko Porto.
Exactly.
Like, where'd you come from, right?
No.
It was to a certain extent the turning point of the season because I want to say, I don't have it right in front of me right now. I think a couple of top 5s or top 6s to start the season off for the weekend off for Rasmussen. Wasn't able to challenge for podiums.
No.
Right?
Yeah, it was like 6th, 5th, 6th, 7th.
Yeah, 5th and 6th right there. It wasn't in the hunt at all. And that was kind of that first chick in the armor we saw. Well, hey, hold on. What's going on here? And Christian told me that they had the setup that they had from Chris Griffiths that was awesome. It wasn't perfect when they got there, and they had to do a lot of work to come up with something that they thought probably even allowed him to run 5th.
Right.
And then the start of race number 3, issue with, I think, the ECU, stands on it. It won't go. D'Orlando plows into the back of him, ends up coming into pit lane, losing a couple laps. But that was when the wheels fell off the cart, I think, for Christian Rasmussen, right?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. That's, that learning experience, that mental experience where, the season before, if he didn't really challenge it for, he won some races and he got quicker as the season went on, but having championship pressure is very different than having race winning pressure.
Oh, 100%.
Right. And we saw that later in the season with Reese, right? Like, it's just running for championship is a total different kind of pressure because I don't think people understand that it's these kids' careers on the line something, right?
And it's the pressure that they have. It's their lives.
$400,000 on the line here, right? Yeah. Like, I've never had $400,000 on one thing in my life on the line, right? So, and these kids are 16, 17, 18, 19, right? Yeah. So I think people have to understand that, and they're going to definitely make some mistakes, and they're going to have to learn how to deal and get through that and get, work through those mistakes and get it in their head that, racing, a lot of it's mental, right? Like, you've got to be able to get beyond that. And, you and I, before we went on, talked about Rob Wickens, right? Like, obviously doing what he's doing, but that's the one thing I always loved about Rob is that he never looks backwards, right? Like,
that's true. Yep.
Never. Yep. He always looks forwards, right? And I think as a race car driver, that's what you have to do.
Well, and throw in this too, all these rookies, they're also racing here.
Right. Yeah, precisely. Exactly.
Speedway. Like, exactly. Again, I talked to the guys from that were coming in. Remember, we did a podcast before it happened, and it was Simon Sykes, and I think Michael Myers was coming in as well, and D. Francesco, actually. Those drivers had never been there before.
Yeah.
I don't think that Sykes had never been under the bridge, under the tunnel. He'd never been in the racetrack. So all that stuff kind of plays. Christian, of course, had been there before, but like you said, and we'll talk more about how that DNF and that third race kind of affected how things happened in Mid-Ohio and how that whole thing kind of twisted. It wasn't really a big amount of time where Christian had to deal with some ups and downs, but we'll talk more about that. Race winners, as we said, Barrichello with a couple of race wins. Reese Gold comes back. He gets his first win as well. So first wins for both Barrichello and Reese Gold in Indianapolis. The two guys that were challenged for the championships, they get wins. The guy they're chasing has the issue.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think that's turned the tide, right?
A little bit. Yeah. A little bit of pressure on Christian, right?
Just pressure. Yeah, it could have been anybody else, right? Somebody else lower than, not the two guys that are like first and second in points. Those are the guys that were challenging. And it actually, listen, to be real, that win really got Reese back into it. It kind of really balanced off the issue from Road America in round number 1.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
He that was when we always talk about what race do you say, okay, that kid, again, with Reese, don't get me wrong. He's showing the pace, and I've always been impressed with his racecraft up until this point, but he'd never shown that next level. But the movie put on Jack William Miller there, what was it, 3 laps to go, 3 or 4 laps to go?
Yeah.
Damn impressive.
Yeah.
It was a race car driver move. And I'm like, okay. That kid,
like that.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, he just outsmarted him. I'm impressed.
That was solid.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I get to see this kid now moving forward.
That's it. So 2 big storylines in Indy Pro 2000. Of course, the flat-out dominance of Stingray Rob and Juncos Racing on the weekend. This blew this championship wide open. He ends up, Steve, winning 3 races. They rolled out. They were strong there before that. Obviously, we knew that Rasmus before, and they've been good at that track, right? They did make some changes to the car, not a lot. And in talking to Stingray, it really was perfect. He was really happy with the car the way it was. Major turning point for Stingray. He gets that first win and then just goes on a roll here. And I'll tell you, just kept throwing fuel on the fire for him having the confidence to get to the end.
Yeah, and it was interesting that I was kind of going back through my stuff, and that was actually his first pole of the season didn't come till that weekend, right? Like,
yeah,
he went the first 9 races of the year without a pole, and then I think he had 5 of the last 8 or 9. So, like you said, you'd always said when he made that breakthrough, which he did at Mid Ohio, it was going to come, and it definitely came because he wasn't. He was the fastest driver. He led every lap. It wasn't even it wasn't close, right? It was pretty much dominant Stingray weekend all weekend. And there's obviously other stuff happened. We've got Braden Eves, and
so let's move to that. So that's the other major story. Obviously, a big incident. Braden Eves, as we said, had a lot of momentum. Was able to get the victory at Mid Ohio. Has a really good run at the Worldwide Technology Race. We're coming home second. The momentum's there. He's looking, of course, to challenge for the championship with a scholarship, having won USF2000 the year before. Big wreck coming out. I think that turn 11? We forgot.
11.
Top of my head. So, 11, I think. Coming out of 11, left rear suspension folds over up, and he just flips up and over. Yeah. It probably wouldn't have been as bad a wreck had it been flat there. But he goes up and over onto the banking, so that's that impact there is on the banking, the directional impact. Neck injury, as we know, for Braden. Those who are watching this and don't know what happens, he's fine. He's going to be, he's obviously going to be back behind the wheel pretty soon, which I think is great. We actually talked to him later in the weekend when he was in the hospital, having joking around. He had the neck brace on. Pretty nasty wreck though, for sure, for Braden, and tough to see a driver's kind of first year in that program come to a halt like that.
Yeah, he was there was some momentum building in the program, and you could tell how well he got along with the team, and how there was a lot of chemistry there, obviously, and thank God he was okay, because I was a little concerned. When you saw it happen, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then it took them a while to get him out of the car, which is good, right? Honestly, it couldn't have. You don't want to see these things happen, but to happen at IMS with the safety crews, with Methodist and IU Health Medical Center right there.
Indeed.
If it's going to happen, that's probably one of the places you want it to happen. But yeah, no, it was definitely a scary one.
Here's some insight for us. Grayson Eves says, Alicia, all good, because Alicia was asking about it, and ready for a comeback.
Perfect.
There you go. Yeah. So here's a small little thing, and nobody really picked it up. I don't think it was a big deal. But after Christian Brooks wins his race at St. Petersburg in the finale, I think Braden Eves hopped into the car and drove the car back to the paddock.
Nice. Perfect.
I just like that. He's the one that drove it back to the paddock, I think, and we're definitely going to see him back in 2021. I think that's a good way to cap this off, Steve, is that they confirmed it. I believe during the weekend, right? During the St. Petersburg weekend, that Braden Eves will be back with exclusive Autosport in 2021.
Which is fantastic. Obviously, like we said, there was a lot of chemistry there. That it looked like the momentum was building. Would he have won the championship? Who knows?
Yep.
Stingray was going to be hard to beat no matter what, but there was a good chance to win some races later in the year, and they were going back to Mid Ohio where he'd been quick.
That's it, right? Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it was definitely a setback, but like we talked about, Rasmussen, sometimes he's, we all know Braden's a tough kid, and that he's a fighter and that he's a racer, because we saw what he did. He built out a big lead in USF, and then some other guys came towards him, and Hunter and him had a back and forth, and that last weekend we saw what Braden Eves was made of at Laguna Seca last year, right?
Exactly that.
Right, like he's a fighter. He's not going to go down without a fight, and don't expect him to do any different here, right? So
yeah, when he was backed in the corner at Laguna Seca, he came out swinging. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
I totally agree with that.
I look expect anything different here.
And I'm looking forward to it, because he's going to come back with a half a year experience or whatever, the limited experience he had. He's going to be so comfortable and so confident when he gets back, for sure. It's going to be a good season next year. All right, so let's move on from Indianapolis. Stingray Robb with a lead in the championship, I believe, at that point after the 3 wins. Christian Rasmussen's got his lead shrinking down a little bit for big victories. Let's start with USF2000. If I'm not mistaken, the very opening race of the weekend, Rasmussen qualifies on the pole. Do I have that in front of me? Qualifies P1.
Yep.
And then the opening lap drives off coming out of Thunder Valley, straight over the grass into the wall.
Yeah, he was warming up his tires, I think, wasn't he? He was trying
he was warming up his they go green. He's warming up the tires, kind of coming down to turn 4. But just a minor little miscue, goes off, overcooks it, and straight off the track into the tires. Yep. Able to get back on the racetrack. But man, that was just.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
But right off of that, the issue that happened technically at Indy, and then to have it happen for the driver as well, that, again, probably showed you that he was still potentially struggling a little bit with losing that much time in the points. Man, it was, when that happened, it caught me off guard in the broadcast for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, I was like, where'd he go?
What happened?
Where'd Christian go? Because I'm like, okay, Christian's going to, they've got the speed back. They're going to be good. And nope. It didn't work out that way, and it worked out well for Michael D'Orlando, who had been quick all season, but finally all right, there he is, perfect. Yep. And Michael had the pace all year, and he kind of did that partial season of USF, and now he's back to full season, and it was due. He was due, and Cape was due for a win.
Yeah, I think if he comes back again next season in USF2000, that was only his first full season, right?
Right.
Exactly. So if he comes back with Cape next year, look out. Michael D'Orlando's going to be a guy to watch for sure. Yeah, big time. So he gets the win, as you said. Reese Gold in second, and I think Nolan Siegel ended up coming home in third in the opening race. Yeah, good weekend for Cape, Steve, because Reese Gold back on top of the box again. Going to work on that jump. Looks like he's falling out of the plane. But hey, second win for Reese Gold. Confidence, second year. He's, of course, moving to Indy Pro next year with Juncos Racing. That was confirmed as well. But wow, another win for him. Cape Motorsports goes with a couple of victories on the way to another team championship with the drivers they had this year. But again, Reese is a pretty talented young driver, and we got a chance to watch him. Remember, he's only 15 years old too, or maybe just 16 now.
He turned 16, but
just 16 now, right? Yeah. He's a kid still. Exactly. Crazy.
And after that, the points were. Let me do a quick. You talk. I'll calculate.
Did you have the points in front of you?
Yeah, I can go get how close they were.
Barrichello finished second to Gold that day, and Cameron Shields actually had his best run of the year, having joined with the guys from D-Force Racing. And when we get to St. Petersburg, gutting to see what happened to Cam at St. Petersburg. He had one of the fastest cars there the entire weekend. Was leading and had a issue with the ECU, I believe. That hurt him. And then, of course, out as well, running in the top 5 or 6, I think, at least top 10 in the race number 2. So
Rasmussen at that point had his almost 100-point lead down to 3 points, right? So
3
points. 3 points going into race 3 in Mid-Ohio. That had to be, but the comeback story is he won.
He wins the next day.
He wins the next race.
The next later that day, pardon me. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's huge to come back and do that. That was a season right there. We all went to New Jersey thinking, oh, maybe Reese, but that was it, right? That come back and win and dominate that third race is kind of what got him back on track.
Totally agree. And that was it. That was the mental challenge, right? Similar to what we saw, I think, out of Braden Eves last year when he fought back at the end and was able to get the championship. This was, I think, Rasmussen fighting back, saying, I got speed here. I just got to be smart, right?
Exactly.
And he ends up knocking it out and doing a tremendous job. D'Orlando second and Reese Gold third. So the two guys that are chasing them are right there. They lost a bit of ground there. But then we go to New Jersey, and really this is where the championships got locked in. St. Petersburg was kind of fun in terms of championships. Before that, let's go to Indy Pro 2000 at Mid-Ohio. Steve, your thoughts on the overall on the race there? Because again, only two races, right? Because we were there with IndyCar that weekend, so it wasn't an open weekend. We only had the two races because they ran the other race at Gateway. I guess over and above it, congratulations to Manuel Suleiman. Tremendous job. Wins the first race. First ever Road to Indy win for the guys in D-Force Racing as well.
Right.
Parker Thompson had that thing.
Yeah, he did. Unfortunately, Parker had one of those forgettable seasons where if it could go wrong, it went wrong for him. It went wrong, unfortunately. But Parker, and like Braden, Parker's a tough kid. He'll come back and he'll bounce back. And I hope we'll see him back in the Road to Indy. I think that's a possibility. So,
everybody knows he needs a shot at Indy Lights. He's just got to have the support for sure. It's
exactly.
Exactly.
But like you said, Manuel had shown all year that there was some pace there.
Yeah.
He needed to put it all together, and he did that weekend too, right? He drove quite well that first race, and he was right there with his teammate.
I think the Manuel deserves a lot of props. He probably doesn't get enough spotlight time, but he deserves a lot of props, I think.
I do too. I actually rate him quite highly.
I do too. Yeah, agree with you.
We both know Jonathan Jorge, JJ, who's the driver coach there this year. He rates him very highly too, and JJ's pretty good judge of talent. So, that says a lot to me. And I thought he did quite well in USF last year too. He's a quiet young man.
Yep.
But it's again, he'll open up as he gets. His English is obviously not his first language, right? So,
yeah, I think he does great with it. But I'll say this too. Remember, he's developing as the D-Force team is developing, right? We saw what the D-Force team did second half of the season. Kiko Porto getting the poles, as we said. He ends up getting a win. We'll talk about it at St. Petersburg. Cam Shields was right in there. Parker and Manuel showing really extremely well in the Indy Pro 2000 class too. That team's coming on. I think the drivers were peaking at the same time with them. So I like to see what Suleiman does next year.
Yeah, I'd agree.
New Jersey Motorsports Park, threat of weather the entire time, standalone event on a track unbelievably hard to pass on. It's not built for, it's a club track to a certain extent, right? And it's not a lot of passing opportunities. Last time I was there before this particular race was Formula BMW in 2008 or something like that, 6 or 8. Some kid named Alexander Rossi won it.
I would have liked to have gone, but it just didn't work in my schedule because we had to get ready for the next one. So,
well, we're back this next year, so we'll have you there for sure.
I'm looking forward to it.
We'll have you there. Barrichello ends up with the win in the opening USF2000 race. Really strong run for him. Rasmussen was right there. D'Orlando right there. Some really good racing, actually. D'Orlando was battling it out. Rasmussen, I believe, if I don't recall, in the opening race, I think he was going after it with Christian Brooks. And I think that
I think so. Yes,
Brooks was trying an outside pass. I think in turn one, and they got together. I think Rasmussen pushed out a little bit into Brooks. Brooks went off.
Yep.
I don't think everybody was super happy about that. But
no, it was racing, right? Racing, right?
For me, so surprised. Rasmussen
win's a big deal, right?
Yeah, but Rasmussen didn't have the championship locked in. It was still pretty tight.
No.
Seconds, fine. Brooks goes by him. Who cares? I don't know.
That is very true.
I was surprised with that big time. But then Rasmussen comes back, wins 2 races, locks the championship. Boom.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
And it was an interesting, like we said, we talked about Rasmussen, having to dig down. Reese Gold hadn't driven for a championship before. So it was definitely not his weekend, which surprised me a little bit. Because I heard the test there was okay. But, something just didn't click that weekend and he struggled a little bit, but he rebounded. And he'll be better for it down the road, right? Like you don't know what you don't know what you don't know, right? And unless you haven't been driving, if you haven't been in championship hunt, you don't know how to react. You don't know how to.
That's true. That's very true. Listen, you have to be in the middle of that fight to have that experience. And even though he came out on the losing end of the fight, it's going to help him further down the line for sure. One of the interesting things, of course, was the number of tires we had for the weekend. I think it was only 4 sets of tires for the entire weekend with the carryovers. So some guys were holding tires and not holding tires. Cameron Shields ends up finishing second in that second race over Barrichello. And then the weather started coming, and we had, like, I want to say right at the start of the USF2000 races when some rain started to come.
Yeah.
Right? We had a red flag at that point.
Yeah.
And we saw a couple of guys step up. Rasmussen goes for the win, but Josh Green in the wet, really impressive. And Prescott Campbell.
Yeah, that was amazing. He had a good weekend in total, right? He finished what, 5th in the first race, I think.
I don't have it. I don't have that right in front of me. So actually, no, I don't have it.
Double check it. Yeah, 5th in the first race and 3rd in the third race. So
and they all got caught out. All the exclusive guys got caught out in the one qualifying session where they were just going out. They were just getting up on their new tires, and the red flag came out. So
right. So yeah, no, it was good to see Prescott have a weekend like that. He kind of had a quiet year. He hadn't done anything dumb by any stretch of the imagination. He drove really smart. He just was lacking a little bit of pace, and which surprised me because he came out of the Lucas Oil School of Racing and won that pretty handily, and that's a good training program, but it takes a while. Like, you're a rookie, right? And it's not easy, right? Like, but he showed that weekend that there's a lot there, and there's a lot of potential there. So.
Well, and everybody has that different mindset right now. We saw Oliver Askew come in, him and Renus 1 year move, Kirkwood 1 year move. It doesn't happen that way for every driver. You know what I mean? It's Askew and Kirkwood, both senior level kart racers winning championships and races coming in here. They're not 14, 15, 16 years of age, which is a different deal. Okay, so Rasmussen locks it up, able to get the championship done, dusted, goes to St. Pete, relaxed. Stingray Rob, opportunity to clinch as well. And I asked him this, Steve, in the in our champions interview, did you go into the race weekend at New Jersey with the mindset of we're here to clinch? And again, it's kind of, we've seen this from all the champions, right? All he said was, we're going to go there and try to win as many races as we can and let it play out. Right. And that's essentially what they did.
Yeah. And it was, the weekend didn't start off very well for them. If I remember correctly, they had a motor.
Blue motor. Yeah.
Right. Blue motor in practice early. They didn't get it. They barely got it ready. So he didn't have a lot of time. And then you had DeFrancesco coming off his worst race weekend, right? Where he was, I think they had a mechanical in race 2 at Mid-Ohio, and then he drove off the track in the wet in the other race there. But then he comes out and pole, leads every lap, wins the first race. Like, what's going to happen here?
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, this is going to be another what's happened for thing right here.
Yeah.
But as we know,
no, didn't work.
Did very well.
Yeah. DeFrancesco gets his first road race win, his road circuit win, which I thought was good. And then Manuel Suleiman again, you guys, how highly we rate him. Dude, it was challenging conditions.
It was.
And he was absolutely impressive.
In the wet race or in the damp race, he was, he drove brilliantly in that race.
His lap times were ridiculously good.
Yeah. No, that was an interesting race too, because you had Colin Kaminsky in there, and like, it was good to see. It's always nice to see some new names, right? And those were good races for those guys. And
here, so obviously, I think if I'm not mistaken, Kaminsky is one of the guys that came in and put fresh tires on in race 2 to qualify well in race 3.
Exactly.
But it doesn't. Yes, he started up further, but it was the lap times he was putting down in those conditions. Didn't matter, right? His lap times.
And no one was catching Suleiman. Like, I mean, he was, I think, 10 seconds out front, right? Like, it was an impressive drive in the damp, right?
Yeah.
So
Unbelievable for sure.
We got
we got some other insight here.
We got Larry there, I think.
Stingray on race 1 was on used tires.
Oh, well, there we go.
And that was, we talked to Stingray about that. They had such good pace, right, that they could roll the dice to try to save some tires, right? And that was we talked about the strategy for the entire weekend. I thought that was really interesting with where guys were using tires to potentially save them, to potentially clinch a championship, because hey, you know what? And of course, then they go into the final race of the weekend or the year. Chip just locked. We're good to go. I actually did I have a couple things here that I wanted to pop up? We talked about Manuel Suleiman. Again, I'll tell you one thing about New Jersey Motorsports Park. The photography is fantastic there.
Yeah,
the back.
Yeah, it is.
We enjoyed it. It was a great weekend. I really enjoyed being there, and we'll see. We ran a different. We didn't in turn 3. We didn't go all the way down to turn 3. We ran the chicane.
Right.
I wonder if they'll think about coming all the way into that corner. I don't know yet. I didn't get a chance to get on the racetrack. I want to do that to get a feel for the track myself. But all right, Steve, let's wrap this thing up. Championships are done. Rasmussen's already celebrating. Rob's already celebrating. Believe it or not, somehow we end up back at St. Petersburg. Again, as I said from the top,
amazing.
Kudos to Green Savory. How do we end up going back and redoing this?
And the city of St. Pete, too, right? They
the mayor, Rick Chrisman?
The event,
oh, man.
Right? Mayor Chrisman, they clearly wanted to have the race back. And, they pulled it off. And it was nice to be back, to be honest with you.
I agree.
I'd made a long travel trip since going there. So it was nice to be back traveling and nice to be back at the track.
Agreed. Just to see everybody there. Let's go USF2000, and we saw the D-Force drivers looking really good up front, right? Really, really impressive up front. I think they lock out the front row, I think.
Yep, they did. And I mean, track record. But
Cameron Shields and Kiko Porto. Race gets rolling, and Cameron looks like he's probably got things handled. Kiko's closing up on him a little bit.
No, they were close, but it looked like it was pretty.
Cameron's going to get a race win. Issue with the engine ends up having to come into pit lane. That gives the lead the lead to Kiko Porto. Kiko ends up with that victory there. Barrichello second, Gold in third. Rasmussen really wasn't anywhere to be found to a certain extent on the weekend. It was kind of
surprising, but you and I talked. He actually had a chance to break the USF2000 win record if he'd won both races.
That's it. So Chris Simmons, who was the engineer for Scott Dixon for many years, Michael Cannon taking that spot over this year. You gave me the line. What's Chris's actual title now?
Competition manager, I think.
Something like that. Yeah. Well, back in the early days with Chris, he was a badass F2000 driver.
He was.
No doubt about that. And he had won, what was it? Is it 13 wins in a year? So Christian had a chance to win that, or
13 wins in a career. I think Chris
did tie him.
Right. Yeah, he had a chance to beat him.
That's right, because he has 12.
He won both races,
So he ends up being tied with Kirkwood and Jared Hildebrand.
Yep. Not a bad group.
So what is it? Was it just was it the lack of that hunger to get race wins? Or
they seemed to didn't have as a team, like even Nolan at some tracks showed some speed and he didn't have much pace, right? Like it just didn't seem they just didn't have.
I would agree with that. They just were off. They were just off a little bit. D-Force was strong.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of knew what we were going to see eventually out of Christian Brooks. He had his obviously best race weekend, qualified well, didn't make any mistakes. He was plagued by a couple of issues, little minor mistakes driving off earlier in the season. He kind of dialed that in. You obviously can't drive off at St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Final round of the season, Brooks qualifies on pole with a new track record. Ends up walking away, not challenged. Of course, I think we had one or two yellow flags, but still able to get that race win. So good for Exclusive Autosport. They were able to get their first USF2000 win of the year in the final race as well.
Yeah, and it was we didn't talk about Christian a lot. There's some guys we didn't talk about here, and it's too bad. But Christian had an awfully good season for a rookie.
Agreed. Rookie of the year.
Right, and with the good drivers he was driving against, it's not easy. Sometimes to come in as a rookie and right, like a lot of guys come in and they'll have had other experience, but Christian, he'd been a while, he came out of, he hadn't been in an open wheel car as often recently.
Yeah, agreed. Again, came through the Red Bull Global Rallycross program and
Rallycross. So I thought it was a great way to end the season for him. I hope he comes back and, if he does, he'll be an absolute championship contender. Yeah,
you can see the emotion there between Christian and his team owner, Michael Duncalf. We got a similar shot of that we'll show when we talk about Hunter McElroy. Let's go then to Indy Pro 2000, Steve. Again, the championship's locked and loaded, right?
Right.
On the PA, I kept talking about Stingray wanting to put an exclamation point on the end of the sentence. Was the season, right? So he came in. I think Parker Thompson had the lap record. Stingray had the race lap record. Stingray qualifies on pole, resets the fast lap, resets the qualifying record, and wins the opening race going away. It just seemed to be like, man, he's going to just storm through this weekend,
right?
And call it done. He does get the. What's that?
He got the record, both records. He reset his race record.
Yeah.
When he got the qualifying record, but those last few polls he had were like, I can't remember. I did the numbers, but
throw that out because you mentioned that to me. Yeah,
a lot of times in qualifying, right? The guy will win by a tenth is a lot in qualifying, right? The tenth of a second win in a pole is a lot.
There's Sting right there.
And those last 2 or 3 poles, he was like 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 3 tenths, 2 tenths. I'm like, okay, that's stepping it up. Like it's a lot. It's quite a bit ahead of everybody else at that point.
It's not even that the gap is large, and wow, the gap's large. There's so many good guys in this Indy Pro 2000. So they're all at the very edge.
Right.
He takes it that much farther. Right. It's not like the guys behind him are slow. It's just that the fact that he really rolled it out there, man. And confidence in your car at St. Petersburg.
Yeah, exactly.
At St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right, so let's wrap up this thing, dude, and go to the final race, Indy Pro 2000. This was one that was a long time coming. The driver, Hunter McElroy, just kept getting better and better with Pabst Racing. Colin Kaminsky was having good runs. Finally, though, in the final race of the season, man, it all came together for Hunter, and away he went, worked his way forward. And, man, what a tremendous race for him to lay it down like he did and cap off the season in style.
Yeah, it was good to see those guys get a win. Honestly, I know Augie will be mad at me, but I expected them to struggle a little more than they did. They struggled at a couple tracks for pace, but that's a brand new program.
It is.
Indy Pro.
Clean sheet of paper.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like they don't have the setup sheets for that. They don't, right? So it's a brand new.
And 2 rookie drivers.
Right. Exactly. So you've got, like for them, they both had multiple podiums before that.
Here's the relief, by the way.
It was getting close.
Yeah.
This was it. They broke through.
Yeah, that was it. Again, they kept getting better and better. A couple of rookie drivers. And again, that bodes very, very well for next year in Pabst Racing to be right in the middle of the fight. And I wrote it down here, Steve. Yeah, we talked about it. 8 different winners, 7 different teams. That's the parity we had in Indy Pro 2000 this year.
The 8 different winners is a record for the series.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Wow.
I went back and checked. I think 7 in 2010, maybe.
Okay.
Man. So yeah, that's a record. So that's fun. Like that makes it fun for us, right? When there's lots of people to write about and talk about.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Right. And listen, it could have been 9 winners because we expected potentially to see Parker Thompson get that victory.
Without Parker Thompson winning a race, right?
Yeah, without Parker winning a race, which was one of the things I would have said for the first and foremost. All right, well, listen, that wraps up our season review. Steve, I appreciate it. Here's one thing, because I'm trying to play. This is going to go on my Rob Howden podcast as well. I want to talk food a little bit, because here's the thing. I had a message to you. Road to Indy's going to Detroit next year. So I've never been there. I don't know where to go to eat. And I know that every time you go there, what's your recommendation for
Coney dog? Lafayette Coney.
But I thought there was 2 Coney dogs like side by side. 2
side by side, and it's a family fight story involved in that. But I grew up, like, I'm obviously Canadian like you, but my dad worked for a big company and got transferred down, and we lived in Essex. So down near Windsor, Ontario.
Okay. Yeah.
So when I was, 7, 8, 9, 10, we'd go over and go to the Tigers games and the Red Wings games. And I don't know why my dad chose Lafayette over the other one's called American Coney. I don't know why he chose that, but that's the one he went to. So that's the one I go to. And they're Greek families, and they're old Greek dudes in there, and it's awesome. It's
a chili dog, right?
Yeah, it's a chili dog.
Oh,
yeah,
I gotta go.
Yeah, and you got to get it the way they were. And I don't know what it is about the dog, but it's weird. But you got to have the Verner's root beer too, right? Ginger ale, right?
We always had Verner's at the cottage, Turkey Point. Oh, yeah, we'd always have Verner's. If you haven't had Verner's root beer, ginger ale.
It's very different than Canada Dry.
It is, for sure. All right, what else? Give me one highlight of a place during the season that when you go to a race, you've got to go to this restaurant.
You're killing me. Go back to St. Pete, since it's the first place we're going to go to.
I like that.
Hollander Hotel.
Really?
Yep. Grouper sandwich.
Oh, that sounds good.
Either fried or blackened. It's good.
I'm a blackened guy.
There's a nice poolside bar that you can go sit outside. It's awesome.
Hollander Hotel. I like
Hollander
that.
Hotel.
All right. All right, what do we got going on here? All right, Steve, listen, I appreciate you coming on. Of course, let me throw up the banner for you there. They can obviously see what you guys do at tsoladder.com. It's also tracksideonline.com, right? That's your IndyCar program. Was it $22 a year now?
$22 a year, and you'll get emails, a lot of emails from us.
We love them.
IndyCar news, and we'll also share the IndyCar PR and the team's PR and that kind of stuff on that as well. So
session notes.
Yeah. And it was a different year for us. Like we're known for sort of being the insider's news source in the paddock. Like we've got a lot of team owners, obviously a lot of media guys, right? Like you'd be amazed how many of the media members are subscribers, and it was tough for us because a lot of my info comes from what I call trolling paddock, right? Like I'll talk to people and try and find out, we're the type of people in IndyCar that try and find out, okay, the guy running for the championship had a bad day. Why was that? Yeah. Right? Like we'll go and try and find out that kind of stuff. And which was a lot harder this year. I'm hopefully everything will be back to normal. I missed my friends in the paddock this year.
Agreed. Yep.
We're learning to do it. We're learning to do it with some phone and texts and that.
All right. So where let's go with this. So if people want to follow you, number one, they can go to Trackside Online and subscribe there. Like I said, guys, it's $22. It's just, don't go out for lunch one day and make sure you have this. It's such a great resource. Steve's not wrong. All of us media guys get it because we go home after the races and find out what's going on we might have missed. TSOladder.com. That's sponsored by Cooper Tires, though, right? That one's
that's sponsored by Cooper Tires.
And available.
That you can. You know what? I'm going to switch that over. We used to charge a $10 fee for those emails. I'm going to switch it over so it doesn't cost anything.
Okay.
If you want to sign up and get those emails, and we're looking at making a few changes. Like I'm looking at a program so that instead of emails, if you want it, you can have it emailed, but we're going to shoot it out where it'll send a link to a text message.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. I've had a lot of people have been. It's something I've looked at doing, and I've seen other sites do it. So I'm like, okay, I like that idea.
All right. Yeah.
I've been researching on how to get that done. So that's hopefully something will get done. But TSO Ladder's free to read. Go on there. I think I've got a few stories that I'll have up, mainly just statistic stuff, I think, in the next couple days.
Okay. Dude, I'm all with the stats. You know how much I love your stats.
Yeah, I do a lot of stats, and that year, I've always done that, but this year that was kind of the direction I ended up going because I couldn't talk to people as often. So we'll keep that out. We'll try and keep that going as we do as our regular stuff too.
All right. So what are you guys on? What's on Twitter? What is it for the two entities?
It's at TSO Ladder.
Yeah.
And at Trackside Online.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. Excellent.
Yep.
What else you got? Any other social we need to push out there?
No, I think that's it.
All right, man. Well, let's let you go. I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you so much, bud.
Thanks for having me on.
I did. There he is, folks. Steve Wittich. Great to have him again. Another fellow Canadian like me, but unbelievably knowledgeable when it comes to not only the IndyCar program, but of course everything with the Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires as well. And like he said, they go deep to get the inside information. Their trackside, they get those small little bits that may not go into a full article, but when you're talking about following on a weekend, you're going to get all that little cool insight throughout the weekend for sure. Again, big thank you to those of you tuned in here. Thank you so much for it. Let me throw the banner up here again. Please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do that. It'd be great. Hit the thumbs up button. Obviously, really good for my channel to be able to get that. Feel free to leave any comments you want. Otherwise, folks, we are done. This has been a good one. I do appreciate everyone, again, tuning on here. We got a lot more stuff to come. On the channel, I've got a couple of podcasts coming tomorrow as well. 2 Book It podcasts, one tomorrow, one Wednesday. Team USA scholarship drivers. Going to talk to Bryce Aaron and Jackson Lee about how they went at the Formula Ford Festival and the Walter Hayes Trophy. That's Tuesday and Wednesday. Follow all my social media, and you'll see exactly when those shows are going to be live. Otherwise, everything available, as always, on the YouTube channel. Again, thank you so much, folks. I do appreciate it. Book it.